Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today I'm going to be talking all about ports from the Wii U and other systems coming to the Switch, because it's a spicy potato. If you hadn't heard, Nintendo have announced that Pikmin 3, this bad boy right here, is coming to the Nintendo Switch in the form of Pikmin 3 Deluxe, and as it happens with basically any port from the Wii U that comes to the Switch, some people have been going, I don't want these ports. So we're going to explore the reasons why that is, and I'm going to come up with a counter-argument that says actually it's a pretty tasty little sausage, because I think it is. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling, let's dive right into things. So yes, the Wii U, that was a thing, wasn't it? The Wii U was out when I actually started doing this job.
Hello there, lovely people. Alex from Nintendo Life here.
And as a result, my job was twice as hard as it currently is, because, my god, no one owned a Wii U. And then thankfully the Switch came about and Nintendo saw dollar signs in their eyes, because this console was actually bloomin' selling. And my job got a hell of a lot easier. And when the Switch was initially announced, we first saw Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, although we didn't know it at the time, and everyone was like, oh, it's Mario Kart 8, they're just bringing that over. But wait, there's 2 items that you can hold and stuff like that. You know, it was a crazy time back then. Looking back on it, it's really obvious, but back then, you just didn't know. And I think largely people were quite happy. You had a few people that were like, oh, I want Mario Kart 9, and okay, fair enough, but this is, you know, it's Mario Kart 8. It's the best Mario Kart game, realistically, objectively, that's ever come out. You know, it's the most refined, it's got the best balance, it's got some of the best courses, the best bloomin' music as well. And so just to bring it to the Switch seemed like a no-brainer. Why not? Slap a few extra bits and bobs in there. Job's a good 'un. Could even argue that it started with Breath of the Wild, because that was originally a Wii U game, and that was the first system I played it on. That was at a preview session. That was back when the stone talus was called Step Talus, and I still remember that. I still very occasionally call them Step Taluses. That's not relevant. But largely, everyone seemed fine. Of course, there were some outliers, naturally, but, you know, the general consensus was, hey, this is a great Mario Kart game, now we can play it on a great system, it looks better. Yeah, everyone was like, yeah, it's got a better battle mode, of course it's good. And then Nintendo started releasing an awful lot more of the Wii U games that it published, exclusive Wii U games, on the Switch, usually with some, you know, sort of minor upgrades or things like that, or maybe just it runs a bit better or it's at a higher resolution, you know. But at the core, these were the same games, basically just ported over, arguably remastered. It's loose terminology. You had Hyrule Warriors, Bayonetta 2, Donkey Kong Country, Tropical Freeze, New Super Mario Bros. U, and there's probably others that I can't remember off the top of my head, but they all came over to Switch, just, you know, basically exactly the same games with maybe some extra little bits thrown in, and usually at full retail price. And now they've done the same with Pikmin 3, and, you know, especially considering Miyamoto said years ago that Pikmin 4 is basically done, Pikmin fans are a bit like, Naturally, this has left some Wii U owners feeling a little bit, should we say, some people have even gone so far as to say betrayed, which is maybe a little bit OTT, but suffice it to say that there's quite a few Wii U owners that feel a little bit gypped. From their perspective, and I totally get it, they supported the Wii U, you know, throughout Nintendo's dark period. And, you know, they bought all these exclusive games because they wanted to support Nintendo, and they were great games. You know, all of the games I've listed are fantastic games. Hyrule Warriors is a bit mashy, but, you know, it's still good. And then all of a sudden, Nintendo has some success, and then they're like, hey, let's just, you know, rather than work on some new games, let's just bring all the old games over and slap them out. And that's how a lot of people see it. And I understand that, you know, you support Nintendo during the time when they're having some real difficulties, and then all of a sudden they get a taste of success, and they go, you don't matter, let's do the thing. The same thing. But realistically, that's not really what's happening. I mean, it sort of is. I'll just make it clearer. From Nintendo's perspective, when the Switch launched, they were sitting on an absolute wealth of amazing, hugely well-received games, because they had to really try back then to try and get people's, you know, blood pumping and things like that, and then they did Star Fox Zero. But the Wii U sold atrociously. Like, I'm gonna get some numbers. That's how committed I am to this argument. Nintendo recently revealed that the Switch has sold a whopping 66 million units, which is ridiculously good. I mean, at the current rate, it's currently outselling the PS4 when it was in its early stages as well. Nintendo has sold more Switches in the same time period, well, in the same number of years since launch, this is confusing, than the PS4 did in the same number of its initial yearage, which is pretty damn impressive. Not doing as well as the PS2 though, that thing was a machine. 66 million units, great success. I don't think anyone's going to deny that except some people who are maybe denying something to themselves. However, the Wii U over its entire lifetime only sold 13.5 million units. That ain't good. To give you a better idea of how ain't good that is, the GameCube, which was largely and for a long time considered Nintendo's worst-selling console, at least worst-selling successful console, because we had things like the Virtual Boy, which there's no point in even including it, managed to sell over 20 million units back in the early 2000s when gaming was big, but nowhere near as big as it is now. Like, the gaming industry is bigger than the film industry, and I think it's now bigger than the music industry. I'll have some text clarifying that at the bottom if I'm right or if I'm talking out of my arse. What's most impressive though is that despite only selling 13 million units, Mario Kart 8, the original on the Wii U, managed to sell over 8 million copies, which is ridiculous. You know, that's over a 50% adoption rate. That is ludicrous. Then you got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Switch, which has managed to shift over 26 million copies. 26 million copies. It's silly numbers at this point. This is a game that Nintendo already released on a previous system, re-released with a bit of spit and polish and a brand new battle mode, which was so welcome, and yet it managed to outsell it. What is that, 3 times? 8 million, 26. It's over 3 times. So I can't say I entirely blame Nintendo when they saw this and they thought, you know what? We've got quite a lot of games that sold, well, I mean, that one sold quite well on the Wii U, but a lot of games, good games, that sold really quite poorly on the Wii U and we put loads of money into. Why don't we give them another shot with a bit of spit and polish, some extra stuff, and stick them out on the Switch, which has sold stupid numbers and continues to do so? I can't say I blame them, frankly. I mean, Pikmin 3, a perfect example. It only just sold over 1 million units on the Wii U. Million units, not bad, you know, especially for a smaller franchise like Pikmin. But then you think, if that managed to sell 1 million units on the Wii U, what's it gonna sell like on the Switch? Answer, probably more than 1 million. And let's just assume for a moment, and this is a big assumption and not at all how the world works, but let's just assume that every Wii U owner also bought a Switch. So what's that, 66 minus 13 million? 53 million potential customers. 53 million new people who theoretically never got to play Pikmin 3 can now play it. And Pikmin 3 is an amazing, amazing game. I love it to death. I don't think I ever completed it thinking about it. Now I'm sad. I've seen some people arguing that Nintendo should be focusing on new games and not just rehashing their old ones, which, yeah, I get it, and there will be some resources going towards these old games that potentially may have gone to these new games. But those resources for bringing an old game over are tiddly in comparison to producing an entire new game. You know, you don't have to create a load of new sound effects, new graphics, or anything like that. You've got all that made, and all you need to do is bring it over, tweak, maybe some new content, bish, bash, bosh, slam it out there. That is not a huge amount of effort proportional to completing an entire new game. My word. And I don't believe for a second that if Nintendo hadn't started doing Pikmin 3 Deluxe, that we'd be getting Breath of the Wild at this time instead. That's just not how it works. There's not a quota of games that Nintendo will release in a year. You know, they will try and aim for a certain number of games, I'm sure. You know, they've got their own plan. God knows what it is at the moment, but they've got a plan. Re-releasing Pikmin 3 doesn't mean that we don't have Pikmin 4. Pikmin 4 is probably still out there somewhere, unless it was Hey Pikmin, which Oh god. Nintendo is still making new games, admittedly fewer at the moment, and yes, it did look like even before the pandemic and everything that 2020 was going to be a little bit of a dry year, but already we've got a brand new Paper Mario game, Animal Bloody Crossing, which has already sold 22 million units. Animal Crossing New Horizons has sold 22 million units in less than 6 months. Breath of the Wild 2, Metroid Prime 4, these are games that are all going to come out. I mean, Metroid Prime 4, hopefully, but Breath of the Wild 2, come on now. They showed us a trailer and everything. They wouldn't, would they? And even if you take the stand that doing this is potentially anti-consumer, from a business point of view, it's actually very pro-consumer. I mean, you know, only 1 million people bought Pikmin 3 originally, and it's a wonderful game. There are probably loads of people that would maybe, really like to play it, but they didn't buy a Wii U because they bought a PS4 or an Xbox One instead, or maybe they just skipped out that generation entirely because funds weren't great or something, but they've bought a Switch because they can play it on the go, they've got their reasons, and they really want to play Pikmin 3. Now they've got the option. How can you deny 53 million people the chance to play a game as great as Pikmin 3? That's just rude. I mentioned I was going to talk about third-party ports as well. Same argument, except not specifically to the Wii U. You know, these companies already have those games, and it's just very easy to port them over, and a lot of people get to experience them for the first time on a system that they currently own, potentially in a better manner. Done. Would I prefer the same number of brand new games instead of ports? Obviously, but they can't be produced that quickly. This is a way of getting more content out there to more people to enjoy in the way that's most comfortable for them, whilst also waiting for brand new games. Is it taking resources away? Sure, a small bit, but only a small bit. And I think that's a fair price to pay. But what do you think? Am I talking absolute total gaga goo goo? It's possible you think that. Everyone's got an opinion, even you. Let us know your thoughts down there in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you subscribe to Nintendo Life by clicking that subscribe button, because I can't think of anything clever. No, actually do it. Do it. Do it. And be sure to check out nintendolife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye. Could you hear that during the recording? Can you hear that? That's the problem with having a leather seat and it being 31 degrees in here with hot lights.